Yo! Today I'm going to show you how to make this type of material by using normals. Basically, I've had interesting results by using other method rather than using just a normal map. So let's go! So I'm going to make a plane, a shader and a light with a target. There it is. And then we are going to open our material in the node editor. And there it is, normal. So the way normals work is by plugging what is called a normal map onto the shader. And basically it indicates where and how the light is going to affect the object. So I have a normal map here. I can just bring it in sumr 4D and plug it here. And let me apply the shader to the plane, and there it is. Oops, my light is a bit strong. I'm also going to hide it from the camera. And now I'm going to move my light, and you can see how the light, even if it's only a plane, it does indeed affect, in a way, the object by adding details and geometries where there isn't any. This was done with this map that was created from these objects. So you are essentially bending reality right now. And so right now I'm using a diffuse material, but what will happen if I use instead a specular material? The plane is not a good medium for this. I need thickness, so a cube. And so you can see how the normal map not only affects the exterior of the object, but also how light travels through it. But here's the thing, you do not have to use a normal map. You can use anything you want. Anything. Gradient, ball off, RGB spectrum. And let me tell you, when you combine these, and so each of them is going to have a different effect when you plug it onto the normals. Like for instance, RGB spectrum. Let me add a fillet. Okay, that's better. RGB spectrum, fall off map. Maybe I'm gonna try iridescent. See this? Yo, let's go. So also I'm going to make another diffuse material, combine these two and make a mix material for us to be able to see what RGB values is going to give these effects. So for this RGB values, we're going to have something like this. If I plug, for instance, the RGB spectrum, and I'm using either red or blue, it's also going to have a different effect onto the normal. And so the goal is to find a recipe with nice looking results. So let's hop into another scene I have ready to explore some of these recipes. Welcome to the scene. Let me show you around. I have my actors, which are the cube, a sphere with different type of surfaces, so we can really appreciate how the light is coming through and the different effects it's going to have. Then I have my setup. It's like this. A few key lights, rim lights, and backlights. Nothing too complicated really. And my cameras, which have different type of post-process, a lot more glowy than others. And for my settings, this is what I have. So I'm using a 4090 photon tracing because I want those beautiful, beautiful caustics. If I'm using path tracing, I'm losing all of this, and it's not fun. this is way much better. Then I would say the most important thing is probably specular depth, which by default is at 16. And if your hardware allows it, I would even suggest to maybe increase this setting. The thing is, if you reduce it to gain some time, you're going to have at some point some black spots. Specular depth is basically how many times light bounces inside the object before being rendered. And so if you have 2, light is going to bounce only twice, and then it's going to render black. So in order to avoid the black spots, you have to increase this. So I'm going to keep it at 16. Diffuse and scatter, I've put 4, but really I can put it at 0 because I do not have anything in my scene that needs scatter nor diffuse. I'm only using specular materials, and it's a really simple scene. Okay, cool. Now let's put back the previous material I had with the default, and let's open our material in the node editor. And I'm gonna do what I did in the last scene, which is making a mixed material, another material, so that we can compare the RGB values and the results it's going to give with the normals. So here I'm gonna put specular, and I'm using BRDF model Beckman. And one thing you don't want to forget to toggle is in index, and it's allow acoustics if you wish to render the acoustics, of course. Also, while I'm copying the recipes, I've mentioned before the black spots, but in some instances you're gonna have to increase a lot the specular depth to be able to lose the black spot. Like right now I have to use 200 if I want to remove this. But in some cases, like here, it's gonna be really hard, even impossible, to be able to remove it completely. And it completely depends on the recipes you are going to use and on the shape of your geometry. Like for instance, my cube here doesn't have any artifacts nor black spots, but my sphere here have this huge black spot here. What happens is that with this technique of manipulating the normal in a non-physical way, you're kind of creating a room of mirror inside of your geometry. So even if you put it at 1024, Octane is not going to be able to render and calculate all the bounces of light. Personally, in some cases, I kinda like the black spot, like for instance in this material. You can see that at 1024 it's perfectly clear, but if I put it back at 16, which is the setting I was using when making these materials, I have this black section here and I have more contrasts. I personally find it way more interesting. So when making this type of materials, I like to play with the intention of keeping the black and white to have this type of results. Because when you combine black and white, you get beautiful results. Alright, let's go back to the recipes now. I think I'm gonna change my setup really quick. So making these materials was more of a creative process for me, and it was difficult to show an exact recipe in order to have results that you can expect. For instance, if I use a normal node and I multiply it with a iridescent, it's going to give me this. But changing the settings in iridescent just slightly is already making a big change in the material itself. So I'm gonna go from 0.5 to 0.4 for instance, and it's already different. So rather than a step-by-step tutorial, I think I'm gonna keep this part of the video more flexible, and I'm gonna show you trials and error and what I've got. Let's start with the node normal. It probably has the most interesting combination in my opinion. if I use geometric and worlds, or object, camera, or tangent. And this is only for geometric, but if I change it for smooth or shading, object was cool. Now I could maybe add a bit of dispersion, and look at that, maybe more. I'm also going to remove the reflection, or maybe keep a little, add a bit of roughness, and reduce the index, and it's already looking funky. And this time I want to use a color correction node to be able to shift the hue. One thing to notice with the color correction node is that you can lose some data when using it. Like for instance, you can see how I had like many echoes inside of this one, and the caustics was looking very interesting. But if I use the color correction without any changes, it's going to remove this effect. However, I can still modify it and shift the hue to have different results, but you're not gonna have what you had in the start. This is the same thing for image adjustments node. Even crazier. Wow, no way. Wow. Oh, that's so cool. And you see, when I've made all of these changes, the RGB value did not change at all. So it's really difficult to expect, like I said in the start, a particular result. You really have to try, check, test the values, etc. Like, this one is looking really nice. Like, I don't know about you, but damn. Anyway, let's see some other examples. Okay, this one is the first material in the pack. Oh yeah, by the way, if you wish to play a bit more in depth with these materials, I've made them available to download. The link is in the description. So yeah, the first one. Notice that I'm using right now denoising. Sometimes when using this type of material where you play a lot with normals, the light tends to bounce really everywhere, and it can sometimes leave you with a not so clean render, so this is something to take into account when making this type of material. And for this one, introducing a new node, fall off map. This is really fun. And you don't have to use normal versus array, you can also use vector 90 degrees. And look at this. The secret here is to use a gradient and make it a lot of stripe. If for instance I use a gradient, a much simpler gradient, you're going to lose those nice details. And let me show you. I mean, it's something else. What if I decrease the dispersion? Okay, much simpler looking. With the dispersion, it looks so good. Wow. Oh man. Do you see how the caustics are going crazy right now? What the hell? I would say this is one of the negative side of using this method. But also right now I'm only using 1024 samples. I'm only at 40% of my resolution, which is 2000 by 750. So yeah, your renders can get pretty expensive when using this. Okay, now the second one. I would say simplicity is best right now. Like, I've used two iridescent nodes with a multiply onto the normal, and I have now a beautiful pearl type material. Like, I'm telling you, Octaners, Redshift has got nothing on this right now. You see this? And this is only with what? Iridescent and multiply? Yo. Also notice that my caustics right now are looking pristine. So like I said earlier, it's going to depend on how complicated the recipes for your normal is, or if you're using the normal node, for instance. Sometimes it can really give you a lot of bounces of light everywhere. Okay, to the next one. We still keep things simple. I have a fall-off map with a gradient, and I'm using a mixed texture with a value and a normal node. If I was to just plug the normal node, I would have this, and it looks pretty boring. I mean, it looks good, but it's boring compared to what we had. And the thing is, when you use this gradient with the strip and the fall-off map, it can really encode the result of the normal node. So let's say I increase this. Wow. I mean, that bad. That's really cool. And with this value, you can also play and have very cool results and keep many interesting variations coming. So yeah, for most of these materials, what I've done was that I've reduced the reflection. I feel like in some instances it was ruining the beautiful effect we had inside the material, but it can't hurt to have a bit of it. And the two other settings I like to modify are dispersion and index. So right now, if I reduce dispersion, I'm losing the echo, but it's about finding a correct balance between the settings. What if I modify the gradient a bit? Ooh, okay. Let me check with more samples. Ah, see? See? We are losing the black. Ah, where is the black? It was so beautiful before. There it is. Yeah, it's around 200 maybe, but I definitely prefer it with the black sections. I was going to record the rest of the video, but I think it's getting a bit long right now, and I think you got the point. The rest of the materials are kinda similar. At least the recipe is similar, because the result is not similar at all. For instance, for the fourth, I'm still using fall-off gradient with the strips, and I'm mixing it this time with iridescent and multiply. For the fifth one, I'm using fall-off again, gradient and mixed texture, and this is giving me this type of tornado twisted result. For the sixth, same thing, same recipe. Seventh also. And do you see the difference between these two? So really, like I said earlier, it's about having a back and forth with the materials to find what you like the most. Like, you must have a conversation with the material. Like, you and the material, you have to get to know each other. Alright, I think that's it. Like I said, the materials I've made with this tutorial are available for free. And if you wish to support, I've also made a bigger pack with even more materials, 144 to be exact. This is my first video, and I like keeping the tutorial/information at the start of the video, and then we can have fun later exploring and discovering the application together. If you like this type of video format, let me know in the comments, and do not hesitate if you have any questions. If you found this video useful, like, subscribe, and enable the notifications for new content to help you develop crystal skills. Okay, bye bye, take care.